Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, discussing all things audiobooks with the authors that write the stories and the narrators that perform them. Brought to you by Viviana, Enchantress of Books.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 3 of the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. Today, I am chatting with author Frankie Page. Frankie, welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to chatting with you because you write a little bit of different genres here and little genres there. And so that to me, it's like, ooh, the more the merrier. But why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been writing and how you got started?
Yeah. So writing, I honestly will say, has been for about ever. I recently just moved and I found a whole bunch of stories and things that I wrote as young as probably late elementary school, early junior high. But publishing, my first novel was published in December of 2020. Yep, 2020. Prior to that, though, it's funny. A lot of my writing and focus had been on screenplay writing. And I went to school and I did a fine arts major in creative writing with my capstone project in screenplay writing. So that was my original start into it all. I really wanted to write like the next crazy zombie movie series. That was really my goal.
Got it. Which is probably where you get your love of P&R, right?
Exactly. I have like two very strong facets between, loving like those classic Lifetime romance movies and zombie and horror movies growing up, that I need to be able to state both of those outlets. Sometimes together at the same time.
Yeah, no, one of the first time, like if anybody ever asks, hey, so I've never listened to paranormal romance before, what do you suggest? There's actually a series by Danica Dark called the 7 series. And the first book, and even in the rest of them as well, but specifically the first book, reads like a contemporary romance that just happens to have shifters that are wolf shifters, as a pack. It just happens. You don't even realize that that's what you're reading until it's revealed in a few chapters later. So it's flat out contemporary so that's why I recommend that one. So it's not one of those, and in a war where aliens and fairies are at war, so you're going, not my cup of tea. Especially for those that have never read one before or listened to it. That's why I recommend that one. But yeah, I mean, it can be done for sure. For your P&R, do you have specific like shifters, vampires, zombies? What do you write?
So right now I have angels and demons.
Okay.
Within this world, there's also magic. So I have a book planned as a spin-off of the series who happens to be a magic user. And then I also have within this world I basically am building one paranormal world. So all my paranormal books will be based in this, with those rules. So I also do have a shifter one in progress that will be more of like a shifter MC dynamic where they're hunting down rogue wolves.
Okay.
And then I also have another one within this world about a reaper and a human who are in love. So I definitely touch different aspects in my book. I don't have a book for them, but I even have in there, for example, like necromancers and, several different, paranormal creatures and elements.
And something for everybody that loves that world, but it may not be specifically into one particular person, kind of a thing. Perfect.
Exactly. And except for later in the series, I mean, a lot of it's also too, I would say, a little bit tamer paranormal. Like, they're in the real world, they're in our world. It just happens to have angels and demons in it.
Yeah.
It's not overran or anything.
Yeah, it's still semi a secret. People may not know. A lot of people probably don't know about it, which I think is a lot of the more basic back in the day kind of P&R where, they were low key and no one knows.
Exactly.
We can't tell anybody, they have to be killed. But then she finds out and oh my God, I love her.
Exactly. And it's nice. And I think it's fun. I feel like also too, as a reader, it kind of brings you more into it. Like, here I am in my normal world. And then one day I wake up and find out about this entire, alternate reality that exists around me that I was completely blind to.
Right. My asshole boss is actually just an asshole because he's the alpha of the pack and he's having issues with the territory being trying, yeah, totally get it. Yeah, I think for me too, I prefer it sometimes it's like that because like, oh, okay, maybe this is more possible versus, different worlds, stuff like that. But then again, I'm a lover of fantasy and basically I'm a lover of books.
I'm with you there. I've read some very like highly built fantasy, where it's overrun with different alien species who are breeding and, the human is basically the meat kebab. And I love those. It's for me, I'm a total mood reader. So, sometimes I need it to be as dark, twisted, messed up and beyond human possible belief as possibly can get, or other times I need it to be sweeter, funny, heartwarming.
Yeah,
depends.
Yeah, of course, that's definitely the same thing. I think many of us are mood readers even before we realize that was such a thing. And then depending on what we want, that's why sometimes we even skip around on or binge watch something on Netflix or another streamers out there.
Exactly.
So when it comes to your contemporary romance, do you write in any particular tropes or any kind of like, small town? What's your contemporaries look like?
So I have my More Family series that is a small town contemporary family saga series. So each book focuses on a Moore sibling and them finding their happily ever after. The subtropes switch between the books. So the first book was a small town second chance brother's best friend / foster brother situation. Then the second book was small town grumpy boss accidental pregnancy. And the third and my most recent release was small town enemies to lover, slight forced proximity romance. There's a few other tropes in there too. Actually, I think one of my reviews specifically said that they've never seen so many tropes so expertly weaved into a single book. So
nice.
It hits a few different areas.
Yeah, years ago it used to be all about the genre, and within the past maybe about 2.5 since COVID, it seems. So 2.5 years, a lot of people are more about the tropes. And I personally feel that some of the tropes can be a little bit like spoilers, like that, unexpected pregnancy. That usually for me was always like, oh my God, she's pregnant. But now I'm like, okay, she's gonna get pregnant.
Yeah, and that's where I like my most recent release. I haven't shared all the tropes on it and let people discover it because one of them is a surprise trope that I didn't want to spoil because it's the third book, so you've already seen these characters for 2 books. You already knew they were going to be enemies to lover and that eventually something was going to happen between them. Like it was so clear in the other 2 books, but how they got to be the enemies and what happened, that was all a big mystery. And so limited my tropes on that one for what I advertised, so that way people didn't get a spoiler for a story that I know quite a few people were really excited to finally read.
Yeah, I just a new book was announced by a writing duo and they shared the blurb and I'm going, dude, you just told me the entire story. I will admit, my writing journey, the one thing I hate writing is blurbs. And it's not because I can't think of what to write. Well, I guess it's a little bit of that. It's because I don't want to write anything because I am very much, I don't want to know anything really about the book, maybe just a general idea of what kind of experience I'm going to get into, but I don't want to know the whole setup. If I'm going to read your book, I'm going to enjoy it. So I've been really getting into like short and sweet blurbs. There was a book I read recently where the blurb was pretty short and it was written in a first person point of view, which I really loved, but it was the tone of the character in that blurb who barely told me anything about the book, just gave it a really good general setup, but his tone and attitude in that blurb, I'm like, if the book has half as much personality as this blurb does, I know I'm going to love it. And I read it strictly for that reason. Yes. I mean, I please include trigger warnings, whether it's a dark romance or even a contemporary. If there's a trigger needs to be discussed, I want to know that. Definitely always include that stuff in the blurb, inclusive of the audiobook, in case when it comes down to the audio samples or anything like that, so people are aware of it, because that's a different conversation.
Exactly.
But the blurbs are supposed to be giving me a general idea. And there's been some authors will write these long ass thesis statements or emails to each other as as they were the characters, but I'm going, dude, no, I just need to know that she's a small town girl. They were sweethearts in high school, but something happened and he had to leave, and then there's a family emergency and she comes back.
Yep.
That's it.
And that's really it. Yeah, that's all you need. I try to keep all my blurbs to like 1 to 2 paragraphs max. And I try, except for, I guess, my paranormal book, that one does have a third, like a split. There's like a kind of catchy top line that's in first person. And then the rest of it's like a third person general point of view. But I feel like given the context of the book, it was really hard to write that one in first person. But like all my other ones, they're like a first person snippet that really more sets up the story and gives a brief idea of what to expect without getting into the weeds, because I don't want to read it if it's longer than 2 paragraphs. I'm like, I'm already bored.
Yeah, that too. But also, if you're telling me the entire story, like I was like kind of curious, knowing this was the second book in the series. I wasn't a huge fan of the first one, but sometimes you never know. You got to get your groove in, right? In a series.
Yep.
And then the blurb came out and I'm going, you just told me the entire journey of these characters, dude.
And then I would say second to that, my least favorite is then the reviews that are nothing but an even longer blurb and summary of the book. I just want to know because I do occasionally read reviews. If I'm on the fence about a book, I kind of want to get especially if it's a dark, because I really like dark books and some twisted stuff. So a lot of times I'm looking for 1-star reviews that tell me how bad the book was, because then I'm probably going to read it. But the ones that I get into, I swear, even good 1-star, 5-star, they're the blurb just rewritten even longer with more analysis. I'm like, I just want you to tell me, was it steamy? Was there lots of sex? How was the banter, the chemistry? I don't want to know the story. I've already got a blurb to tell me about the story. I just want to know how steamy and dirty it is.
It's funny too, because that's also been a trend with the reviewers. And I'm like, all right. And then when it comes down to the part of the review, so they reiterate the blurb in their semi-own words, literally sometimes just changing a sentence structure here and there. So I'm like, you didn't try that hard, did you? And then they're like, and it was really, really good. Chapter 24. Oh my God. And done. I'm like, I know you were asked, you probably got an arc. Yeah, there's a transparency that you got an arc and you're cheating. That's cheating. So reviewers, definitely give us a quick note of, hey, this romantic comedy, so we know what genre it is. Hero, blah, 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 heroine, blah, blah, blah. It was a good story. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What interested you in the characters? How much steamy and, smut is in it? Because there's, again, 2 camps, I always say, when it comes down to readers in romance. Those that are more into the plot and the character development and the storyline and everything like that then happens to have the smut, and they're like, how steamy is it? And that's like a 3rd or 4th down the line question. Whereas some others are, how hot is it? How turned on am I going to be? And yeah, there was a good story, right? Okay. And then in the middle is everybody else that kind of fits into this lovely diagram. And either one of them, whichever camp you're in, is okay. But those reviews definitely need to be, I think we need to start working on some of those, because reiterating the blurb does not constitute a review.
No, it really doesn't. And I mean, like I said, the review is your opinion. Like I leave a lot of reviews, author, I know how important they are. So when I read a book, I leave a review, and it doesn't even need to be that crazy. Like you said, this was a fun romantic comedy, had me laughing out loud. The banter between the characters was great. The steam was off the charts. Love these 2. I strongly recommend reading. That's it. You don't have to spend too much time on it, because as the personal reader, I'm reading reviews. Those are the ones I'm reading. And like I said, except for the 1-stars, the 1-stars is kind of the only ones I accept with the longer, because usually they're rants. that are complaining. And so I will sometimes read those because, like I said, that will usually sell me even more to read a book occasionally.
I will go to the 1-star reviews and the 2 ones when I see a lot of 5-star reviews.
Yep.
And that's because I'm going, you either work for the author or you are in their ARC team and want to stay in their ARC team. Because there are also some people out there that would love to blow smoke up the author's ass and that of the narrator too sometimes, that everything they read is a 5-star review. And I'm going, no, impossible. There's got to be something more to it. And that's where when I see those, I'm going, okay, back into the 1-star. And what is it about that they may not have? Like, and then I'm seeing, something like maybe lack of plots, storyline was not consistent. There's a lot of jumping or edits too, if it wasn't there kind of stuff. And I'm going, okay. So they were more into the sexy times than the actual storyline or vice versa. So
yeah, there's so much to find in those 1 to 2-star reviews. I literally found my favorite book ever because of 1-star review.
Wow. Okay.
Just literally, it was someone who the author had a lot of trigger warnings. So the person who started this book shouldn't have read it. It was already clear. Like the trigger warnings were very explicit. It explained very well what to expect. So no fault on the author, but the reviewer, they were upset because the first time for the female, her first sexual experience was, let's just say, very less than pleasant. And yep, I read that and I'm like, 1 click, sold at this point. Like the blurb I was kind of iffy on, like it sounded good, but it just wasn't what I was feeling. And then I read that 1-star review and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sold now. This is exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And that's okay. And that's where I always say that one of the things I love about romance is there's something for everybody and anybody.
Exactly.
And, yeah. And also that's also where I was saying about the triggers is important to include, and that the reader, so it's the responsibility of the author to include the triggers and make sure that we are aware of them so we feel safe in their house of books, And then, but it's also the responsibility of the listener and the reader to acknowledge those triggers. And if anything goes, then don't read it. Don't think that you're going, maybe they were on the team and they were erring on the side of caution of potentially including it, but it doesn't really include that trigger. No, assume that it's a full blown on scene that has that trigger on it.
Exactly.
And don't, because then your review is going to be like, it was a 1-star. I didn't like it. And it was all about the triggers. And I'm going, but you read the blurb, right? Because it had the trigger warnings on it, girl.
Yeah. I mean, even in my contemporary, I have trigger warnings. I don't go into in the contemporary, so far, nothing has happened specifically, but some of the people in my stories have some incidents from their past that are discussed. And I know for some people that can be, even if it's not explicitly shown in a book, just even talking about it can trigger some individuals. So yeah, even in something as light as my contemporary, I have a trigger warning, because if a topic is super sensitive to you, then I would prefer you not to read the book.
Absolutely.
I don't want to cause any issues for you.
No. And to me, it's all about the consent and the safety of the reader and the listener. I always feel like when you have a book, you kind of are inviting me to your house, which is kind of like why I use that analogy, and you're welcoming me into your world. And I need to feel safe in order to enjoy it.
And you know what? I love that. That is a great analogy, because it really is. I'm inviting you into my mind.
Yeah.
It's not always a safe place.
No, and that's okay. If I know that I'm going to go to a house party, I can mentally prepare for that. If I know that I'm going to be going to a gala, I can mentally prepare for that. If I know that I'm going into a barbecue and, swimwear, shorts, and all this other fun stuff is going to happen, again, I can go appropriately. But that's why I use that analogy, is because I am trusting you to keep me safe as the author.
Yeah, you don't want to, it's a crappy friend if they invite you for a party and don't tell you it's a costume party and you show up as the only one not dressed for the occasion.
Yes, or the opposite, as we found in some books.
Yes.
Where they try to humiliate you and tell you it's a theme, then you're like, oh, good, because you love cosplay. And then everybody's like, oh no, wrong idea, darling. And you're going, they're assholes, as you throw the book across the room. Yeah. So with writing both, PNRs and contemporaries and all the other stuff that you have down the pipeline, where do you get your ideas for these stories?
Honestly, it's just things that come to me, like the smallest things spark an idea, and I just go with it. Like it's it's this tiny little spark, and then I just keep building on it. I would say that I honestly somehow get characters in my head that just, I don't know, like my paranormal romance. I was sitting on a conference call with work, so it wasn't even like anything inspirational. I was just sitting on a conference call for my full-time job, and I don't know, I think someone even just made the comment, like, something about selling their soul, and I thought to myself, how cool would it be to write a story about a woman selling her soul and falling in love with that demon? And then immediately, is when I was done with my shift, I sat down and wrote the first draft over that weekend to an entire book, because it was just this idea that kept rolling from there.
Mm-hmm. The moments when the day job can be good.
Exactly. I'm like, excuse me, guys, I need to get going. I have, pick up my daughter from school, and then, log off and start writing. But, it really was. It was, nothing super crazy. Even my very first book, Forevermore, that one, my favorite trope is brother's best friend, especially older brother's best friend. I'm pretty much an only child. I have 2 stepsisters, but they came in when I was in my teens, so we didn't grow up together. So really an only child. So I really romanticize that whole sibling thing, especially the big protective older brother and his hot friends. So I love that. That's like my favorite fantasy. And I don't care. I will read any book in that trope, light, dark, doesn't matter. You usually have me one click with that trope. And I live in Minnesota. I grew up and spent a lot of times in small towns. So I was like, how great would it be to write a brother's best friend romance? And then, I could base it in Minnesota, small town. I know Minnesota small towns. And then I was like, I've read quite a few family series, and I really love those. I think it's a great way to continue telling a character's story long after it's done. So
yeah, because you get those little updates in the other glimpses. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's fun without having to beat their story with a dead horse. Like, you can have them there, you can show character growth and development without really having to talk about that character too much anymore. So yep, that was just all it was me saying I want to publish a book and I love this trope, and I went from there.
Yeah, as an older sibling, I don't get the luxury of having that older brother. My younger brother, though, sometimes, who's only younger by 2 years, will swear he's older. Especially when it came down to the protectiveness, he would kick ass if anybody. I mean, he would say, "You're a dumbass," and I'm like, "What?" But someone else said I was a dumbass. Oh, they were in trouble, and he would kick ass. But yeah, that whole bigger brother thing is definitely something I think that we all kind of have like the moments on from a reader and listener perspective, because it's a little bit of like, it's not allowed. And I'm like, but what if they know? Who cares?
Exactly. And it's so great. And even what's great too is like throwing parts of my life into the book, like some of my experiences. For example, I have this novella that's a spin-off of my More Family series that introduces another family, and it's the Murphy brothers. But the spin-off doesn't star one of the Murphy brothers yet. It's just in their bar. It's, patrons, but the girl is a girl who grew up in this neighborhood. So kind of, like me, and I didn't have any siblings, but I had a lot of boys in that neighborhood who were friends. And it was that same concept. Like, they all looked out for me like I was their little sister. Like, I didn't have brothers, but they all took care of me. And if any guy did anything, looked at me funny, I mean, their ass was getting beaten.
Yes.
It didn't matter. And it wasn't a jealousy or, sexual interest. It was just strictly, they knew I had no one else. And like, we were a really tight clique neighborhood. So we all looked out for each other and, played on the streets together. And if anyone was ever in trouble, we always had each other's back.
Yeah,
so
it was like almost like an adopted family of sorts.
Exactly. We're just a bunch of misfit kids, playing in the West End with no parents, from sun up to sundown. Like that was our childhood. And so I put a lot of that element into that story building because, that was more true for me compared to, the big family siblings. That's more of my fantasy.
Yeah. Now I had a group of friends like that were also a little bit older. And then they were like the older brothers of my friends, and then the older brothers, friends, kind of a thing like that. And yeah, they were protective too. And I'm like, dude, stop it. Girls gotta date. They're not all assholes. Oh, I know them. I don't care. Stop it.
You don't know how they treat me. You know I'm in the locker room.
Yeah. Or funny, years later, you find out that they had a crush on you and they didn't say shit. And you're going, really?
Yeah, that information would have been totally helpful.
Would have been nice back then. And now, like, whatever. Anyways. Yeah, those are always kind of fun stories, and one can relate in similar aspects and stuff like that. But yeah, no, those are all fun. Looking forward to those when they come out and then catching up with them. I also like it when there's those series within families or a group of friends. And because I sometimes feel that the authors, in order to placate, make the listeners and the readers happy, that, you know, the happily ever after has to be, and then they got married and had a child. You know, all open one make, but they just met. And in books like this, they ended up together, and you know, in the first book, and they're dating and they're like officially boyfriend and girlfriend, so they got their happily ever after. By the third or fourth book, now they're engaged, because, and you learn this because of the through the eyes of the different characters. And then, you know, the brides, the maid of honor and the best man are enemies, and now they're getting married. And you're going, you know, that first couple from that first book is now getting married. And someone going, oh, okay, cool. And then
and I love that.
Yeah.
It is so great to have that. And yeah, and it is hard because, I mean, yeah, a lot of people want that happily ever after in the end of your book. And sometimes I squeeze that in with an epilogue, you know, so that way I can just skip ahead. But it's nice watching that happen. But then at the same time, you know, as a writer, I don't like to write like a whole bunch of fluff. So,
yeah,
you know, I'm not going to try and write 5 years into the future, but this is a great way to do it with giving you a whole bunch of other stories.
Yeah. But also everybody's happily ever after looks differently. Not everybody gets married. Not everybody has kids. Not everybody, you know, can have kids, or how they have the kids is different. And I think that we're now growing and realizing that a lot of these topics are no longer taboo. And so the readers are really looking forward to, yes, we want to know what the happily ever after is, but we don't necessarily have to end it in a wedding with kids.
Nope. And actually, funny enough, I have 2 books that I do think they end with engagement, you know, but it's not even like, one of them isn't, you know, like all hearts and romance engagement. It's just 2 people who, you know, really never really thought of themselves commitment type, and they're kind of like, well, you know, why can't we get married? Like, why not just fly off to Vegas and let's just get married? Like, who cares? Like, we can go have fun. And, you know, and that's nice though. Like it doesn't always have to be that way, but it was definitely a challenge to write at first, because, you know, while I'm completely for it, like, you know, they don't have to get married, just being together is a happily ever after. But with the first draft of it, and I wrote it, I was like, oh, the guy sounds so weak and the girl sounds like such a bitch, and I'm like, I need to completely change this, and I ended up getting the dynamic right. But at first it was a tough one to do, because, you know, I was working with a flawed female character, and I feel like when you have one of those, you have to really walk a very careful line, because I've found that readers don't forgive that flawed female as easily as they do the male. The guy can do a million things wrong, but that flawed female, all of her mistakes, they're like, ooh, you know, can we forgive her? And I'm like, she didn't even do anything that bad. She didn't cheat or anything. She just had a really bad life and low self-esteem, and she made a couple bad choices, you know, like, but.
Or she's reacting to him being an asshole because he's the one that did all the things.
In this scenario, the guy was innocent. He was, you know, just a casualty of it, but she just basically had a really shit dad and low self-esteem, and was constantly being verbally abused. And she saw, you know, this guy as this perfect everything, and herself as trash, and she just could never see herself being good enough for him. So, I mean, he didn't do anything wrong, but at the same time, while she's flawed, I wouldn't say that she did anything wrong either. You know,
we all have insecurities, and we all have that fights at times with someone, that if we would just had the conversation versus just going and walking away for 10 years and coming back and understanding, oh, it was just a mistake.
Well, and you know, that's also the thing too. Characters need time for growth. You know, they were when, sometimes these things happen when they're young. And at that time, even if, they would have had the conversation, they hadn't grown yet. So there's that self-doubt's going to be there. They need time to grow and develop and realize, you know what, I'm not what this person says, or I'm more than this. And, that sometimes those happily ever afters aren't meant to happen right away.
Yes.
It's not common, or really, I think, that smart to meet the love of your life when you're 16. I mean, some people it really does work out, but for a lot of people, that's like a death sentence to your relationship, because you're both young, you're both naive, you haven't really experienced the world. And, it's when you finally get older and start living it, you realize you're not even that person you were when you were 16, and you've grown apart, and now you feel guilty about it. And that's not fair to either party.
Correct. No, for sure. And thanks for, and that's a good point that you made about how readers and listeners tend to be extremely forgiving of the hero, but man, they give no slack and are so harsh for the heroine that a lot of authors are starting to have that conversation with them and saying, no, that's not cool. And even and even readers are starting to be like, no, we can't continue to do this, because we then also, the review sometimes will reflect that, and it's like, well, there was a reason why she was being so cautious, or there was a reason why she was not trusting, and that may not be discussed, versus oh, she was such a bitch. He, on the other hand, was just perfect and dreamy.
I've literally read books where I swear the guy could have done anything short of killing her puppy, because I feel like killing the puppy is like a hard no on pretty much everyone's scale, but he could have killed like 1,000 people and she'd forgive him. The readers would forgive him because he did something sweet. But the girl just is a bitch once, has a bad day. It's like, ooh, I don't really like her. She's not good enough for him. It's like, have you ever looked at yourself? Do you know how many days I'm a total, bitch to my husband for no reason? He didn't do anything but look at me funny, and he forgives me, and it's great. I'm not a bad person. We just all have days.
Yeah. Or sometimes even then, when they set a boundary, that it's not a huge boundary or anything that should be like, that should have been a given of a boundary, but because of where the male character is, he's not seeing it. And now she is looked at as if it's all her fault that he's not, that he's not happy, or that they broke up. And I'm like, no, he needed to grow. She did correct by setting that boundary for herself, because that's what she needed and wanted, and it's okay. But yeah, readers and review and listeners are way too harsh on the heroine, and way too lenient sometimes on the heroes. And that also goes for the narrators too. They're all about the male narrators, and they're like, yeah, and the female was okay.
And what's funny, and it's on that, and I'm totally opposite. Female narrators, I'm like, oh, okay, she sounds great. A lot of the male narrators, I've been like, no, this is not what I heard in my head when I first read this book. Like, you're not fitting it. I think I'm way more critical of the male narrators.
Yeah, me too.
And maybe it's because I watch a lot of anime, and I'm in love with so many like male voice actors from these animes, that I have this really high standard in my head for like that male voice acting. I don't know.
No, yeah, but even the female voice actors that are in anime have such a range where they can be like, Amber Lee Connors. Oh, I'm so in love with her. Her range is just phenomenal. Like, okay, how can you be the 13-year-old happy-go-lucky? Oh my God, everything's so cool. And then the evil, woman, and that has a bit of that sultry, but she's evil because of that deeper voice in the animation kind of a thing.
Yes, Chris Sabat is another really diverse one. I love all his characters, but there, he can play so many different ones and the different tones. There's a few others too that I'm like, I love these guys. They're so great.
Yeah. No, I'm when it comes down to the narration and the job and the work and how they do it, I'm very particular, more so I think on the males than I am on the females, because there's a lot of more things to it, especially when it's done in dual point of view, where the male's reading all the POV of the male character, and the femme is reading all the POV of the femme. It's, the range is different. I think women can go a little bit deeper in their range and tones, and still, okay, yeah, that's the dude talking. But a lot of the guys, they already have a deep voice. They can't go too high either. And some of them will try to emulate more of a woman, and all of a sudden they're all like Valley girls, and I'm like, nope, we do not talk like that.
Yeah, that's always a great one. But I feel like we do it too, because I was doing a live for my recent release, and I was reading the chapter, and it was in the male's point of view, and everyone's like, do a deep voice, and I did like that, what a quote unquote stereotypical male voice is, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty much the same thing I feel like men do with all the women too.
Yeah, but I think also that's where it would differ, is because you're not a narrator. You haven't taken any classes. Yeah, but again, that's a good point too, is because the need to have some experience, and some, are God-given talents, and they pick it up out of nowhere, and it's like, dude, you just started, and they're fantastic. But they continue the journey of learning, which I always think is important. And others have, took webinars, coaching classes, fill in the blanks, from anything from acting to accents to even how to do the different characters when you do have a lower voice range, register, and how to make it different and all that fun stuff. And so that's also where hiring a narrator that has those experiences are going to help sell the book.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't believe James, not voice actor. Well, maybe he's done some, but James Masters from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I remember being so shocked. I looked it up and found out that, he's from Texas. He just studied abroad, and he just really mastered an accent.
Yes. I all the time that I was watching Buffy, I was going, he's British, right?
Yeah. And you find out, no, not all. Or the same thing with Walking Dead. I mean, there were so many prominent cast members that were English that developed Southern accents to work on the show. And it's like, oh, that's really crazy. Nowadays, you can't even trust what character they're playing.
No,
because they could be completely Southern belle, but pull off this expert English accent that you would never imagine.
Yeah. Or the opposite, they're British, and I didn't know the and I can't remember his name, but the guy that played Eddie in Stranger Things, he's actually British.
I did not know that.
Yes.
That is super. No, I would never have even guessed to watching the show.
Me neither. I was like, because I sometimes there's certain words, and that's also where editing comes into play, just like in audiobooks, but there's sometimes I think that you still stick through, and you're going, did I hear an accent? Maybe there was a word in a vowel or something there, but nothing on him as from that perspective. But the same thing happens with bands, like in singers. A lot of people are like, why does he have an accent when he's in the interview, but not in the song?
It definitely happens. For example, I would say the one time in Buffy where I noticed that James Masters wasn't English was when he was singing, and that One More Time with Feeling, when he sung that song, you didn't get that classic English tone in his voice that I've heard with other English bands and stuff. Still great song, but you could just hear it more there, that he didn't have that accent naturally.
Yeah, not that any of us really cared though, right?
No, I don't care. I still love the song, and that whole episode. Yeah, the whole episode is just great. I watch it just by itself, and I have the soundtrack. So
fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah, love Fangirl. He's really good. There's a lot of, again, when it comes down to the accent work, less is more. How to go about it, depending on where the character is. You don't want to overdo it, because otherwise there's going to be a Lucky Charm effect to it. And I kind of always use that as an example, because that is such a characterization of Irish, the Lucky Charms character. And I'm going, I don't think I could ever listen to a book that is that long. I mean, that has that kind of tone and voice and accents. I'm like, I can't cap it. I can't do it. Yeah. But you are going to be attending the Allure convention in September.
Yeah.
And is this your first convention?
Not my first convention. Nope.
Okay. But your first one that has specifically to do with audiobooks.
Yes. And I'm very much an audiobook virgin.
Because none of your books are yet in audio, right?
No, they're not. It's something I've been looking into, but I haven't done yet. That's why it's funny when I got the email asking if I'd be interested in attending Allure. I was like, you realize I have no audiobooks, right? I see there's this big audiobook theme, and I have none. And they were back like, well, yes, we see that, but we want to convert you to our side. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm in. I'll come.
We
learn
have
more.
cookies.
I'm like, this is perfect. This is great. I mean, when I say the audiobook version, I even mean listening. I've listened to maybe one full audiobook. I've tried listening to a couple because my full-time job, my cousin, she's like this huge audiobook listener because she listens all day while she's working. And I've tried to do that. It's just I found a couple that I really like, but I haven't found too many yet. But I was like, okay, I'll just read and stuff. But I've been getting more into it because lately a lot of my self-editing, I hate that it's a robo voice, but I've been doing a lot of the read out loud with my books while self-editing so I can catch more errors. Then listening to books isn't so bad. I'm starting to get used to this. Maybe I should actually start listening to it with people with talent, not, Microsoft Word.
Yeah. Oh no, you'll see a difference, a huge difference between human narration and that of AI. And that's where, it really, the magic happens, is that how, the human being can narrate a book. But yeah, no, we'll offline, I'll get some information from you as far as what you have been listening to and what do you like, because that's the other thing too. There's some listeners that love an audiobook, and it's not just a genre so much too, but it's who the narrators are as well. And if there's accent or not. And so we can get into that offline, and I can provide you with a list of really good books that are in audio for you to check out. But having no current audiobooks and going to an event that is specifically for audiobooks, what are you kind of looking forward to as an attendee? Because this is not just a signing for fans. There's going to be a lot of panels and, workshops and stuff like that for authors and even narrators that are going to be there. So what are some of the things that you're looking forward to that maybe other authors can, next time around or can still join, that can be as attendees as well? What are you looking forward to for this convention?
Well, besides the Prohibition Party and the Fire and Ice Ball, I am really looking forward to the workshops on Friday. That was one of the first things that I saw with the tickets. And I was like, oh, this would be a great opportunity to learn more about audiobooks. I try to read online and, talk in author groups and get advice from people who have done audiobooks. But, the advice sometimes is just so all over the spectrum. You have one person telling you how simple and easy it is to do for free, or, not free, but like with a royalty share program. And then you have someone else telling you not to do that. That's the worst thing ever. You need to pay $6,000 to have one developed. Otherwise you'll never make money. And, it's all these really strong, really unvalidated opinions. They're just kind of all around there. So actually hearing stuff from industry experts, authors who have had a lot of audiobooks made, who narrators who make them, meaning being able to meet producers, I'm really excited for that because I like working with people that I know or, have some sort of built relationship beyond just the internet. It's so many times you get, kind of like you get sold a bag of goods that isn't there, or maybe they don't have the most glamorous site or setup, but they're truly experts. They just put all their energy into their craft. So, it's the same thing with books. You have book covers that look absolutely gorgeous, and then you get inside and you're like, that was nowhere near as gorgeous as that book cover. Like, that's a hot mess in here. Or you find a book cover that you're kind of like, that looks kind of, crazy. And then you get inside, you're like, this is the most beautifully written thing I've ever read. Like, so that whole don't judge a book by its cover situation is where I think being able to meet people in person and ask real questions and in person and get that experience, I think that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, it's a lovely community that we live in where everybody's always willing to help. But unfortunately, everybody knows something. And then not everybody's an expert. And having the conversations with those that are actually in the industry versus those that are just lover of books and may have a little bit of experience or are so brand new to it that one experience that they had is not the everything kind of a thing. And there's such a variety of, situations where it could have been years ago and they're still talking about that one bad experience that they had that cost them $10 million to produce an audiobook. And, they've never made a dime on it. But have you talked to anybody recently that's in the industry that can provide you with some guidelines? So this convention, I think, is going to be great for a lot of authors that are thinking about it and want to learn more, or know that they want to do it and they just need some help with how to go about it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like I just need that opportunity to talk to someone and have someone really dumb it down for me, because I know nothing. And while the reading's been great, it's, you know, it's still one of those things, like I have these lingering questions in my mind that would be great just to say, like, all right, well, what about this? Or how does this work? Just, you know, get that ability without having to send an email or, you know, do lots of back and forth. And
Oh yeah.
like I said, and I'm a really good people reader. So I kind of like that ability to meet some people from the industry and say, like, you know, I can immediately feel that we're jiving really well. Like, let's talk more.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely something about meeting in person. And for a lot of individuals, this is going to be their first event ever, or their first event since this whole lovely shutdown of the world occurred. I know I need to remind myself that I need to people again. I haven't done a convention in about 2.5 years, but I have been peopling more and more often. And I do this, so at least I get this experience. But to be able to hang out with you in person and be like, girl, did you listen to this voice? Come over here, meet so-and-so. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, that'll probably be me going around blushing the entire time. I was working with my alpha recently, and I was talking to her specifically about audiobooks, and because she really wants my dark paranormal in an audiobook, and she was sending me voices of like, I think this would be this guy, he is so perfect, and you know, what about him, because we were talking about one of the characters and how he has a slight accent, but it's not going to be overly, it's something slight, and trying to find that right voice for him, and like an example of, you know, like a mannerism. And she said to me, I'm sitting there, you know, listening to this, eating dinner, my cheeks keep blushing. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Oh girl, wait until you have to listen to that whole sex scene that you wrote in audio.
Oh yeah. I even blush when I read it or listen to it when the computer reads it for me. I'm like, yeah, that got a little dirty.
Oh yeah.
I'm like,
it's a little
good
different.
thing for headphones, or the fact that my office is in the basement and the people don't always hear me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's been many times where people have been in public and something happens and the Bluetooth disconnects them. It's all of a sudden that one steamy scene is playing for all to hear. And you're going, off. Oh my God, stop. But that is something to, I think, a lot of authors are, yeah, of course it happens. A lot of authors tend to be like, ugh, about listening to the sex scenes. And some of them are like, oh no, I want to hear it. So again, runs the gamut. But I'm glad that
I want to hear it, but it doesn't change me from blushing during it.
Okay, see, so you're like that. You're the one in between. They're like, no, I want to hear it, but I'm still going to blush.
Yep.
Okay, and that's okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you've decided to go to Allure and get the information and get some networking done and meet some of the, you know, other peers of you that are authors, and meeting new narrators that are new and can provide you with a lot of help and insight, because I think that's important.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. My editor, she's coming with me as my table mate. And yeah, we've been so excited about the entire event.
Perfect. Well, it's getting a little bit to know you better before this lovely event occurs. We're going to do a quick game of Two Truths and a Lie, where you tell us 3 things about yourself and we got to figure out which one's the lie. So if you're ready.
All right, I'm ready.
All right. So what are your 3 things, love?
Okay. I once worked as a bingo ball caller. I've visited all 48 continental United States. I'm a 2-time mini truck limbo champion.
All things you do in a small town in Minnesota.
Exactly. We get bored.
No, you guys get creative, okay? You get creative.
Creative.
Is the lie that traveled to all the 48 states?
Yes, it is. I think I've only probably been to like 24 of them.
So
halfway there.
Yeah. Usually that's how the lie always happens, where it's similarly the truth, but a little change in details. So yeah. All right. So you've been to 24, instead of the 48. But
I haven't really done the West Coast at all. I've been to California, but I flew there, so I didn't even drive. So I didn't even get the experience to say, like, I drove through, half of that area. So that's about it.
Wow. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about this 2-time mini truck thingy?
So when I first met my husband, one of the first things I recognized him, besides the whole hot Dickies tattoo, big ears, he had the gauges and pack of Marlboros and stuff, is he had this lowered truck. And my dad's a mechanic. I used to work at Valvoline and stuff as like a lube tech. So I've always kind of been like a gearhead myself, but he's like way beyond me. And I got into these trucks, and we had this Mazda B2200 that he said I could have. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. So we ended up chopping the top off of it because I wanted it to be a convertible, and completely gutted the thing, welded the doors shut. I mean, it's a complete hazard nightmare. We completely gutted it out, so I had no structure to it. And I did a full air ride suspension on it, so it lays completely flat on the ground. And I would take it out and drop the end and throw sparks at shows and stuff. But this limbo, they used to do the lowrider limbo at these car shows, and you would have a mix between mini trucks and even just low vehicles, because you have like these old school Jeeps that the windows completely fold down like their windshield. And so many interesting things. Anyways, yeah, because my truck was completely lowered and I cut off the roof to it and I halved the windshield eventually. Yeah, I would just go to the limbo and I'd slam it to the ground and drag it through the finish line. And I won 2 years in a row. It was really awesome.
Yeah, see, I love sometimes, like, I love seeing the low riders and stuff like that. And I'm always like fascinated on the mechanics of it and, the gearheads and all that fun stuff. But I'm also going, oh, but if there's a bump on the road.
Yeah, that my truck, because there was no weight in it. And the airbag system in it was, so advanced, or so high pressure, that if I had it completely flat on the ground and filled up my tanks completely and pressed the switch really fast, I could actually jump my whole truck. So when I was driving, there's no weight, and I would have it lifted while driving because you want it, up. You don't want to worry about speed bumps or anything. But if I'd hit like a pothole or too big of a bump, I mean, my truck would start to like jeer to different sides because there was no weight really keeping the truck on the road. It was a death trap. I completely and honestly, it's why when I had my daughter, I'm like, okay, I love this truck, but it's not for me anymore. It's, I don't want to die driving it now. And my daughter, by the time she's old enough that I would ever put her in here, this truck is going to be long gone and dead. So I ended up giving it to a good friend of mine who, loves mini trucks and still uses them and stuff. But my husband still has his just wasn't as cool as mine. His was more like fancy. Mine was the death trap. His is all cool and fancy and, stuff like that. Like I did all my own body work and Bondo and painting with spray paint in my garage. And it looked really great for a girl who knew nothing and just wanted to tinker around.
That's great. No, yeah, it's one of those things that it makes for a great story when the kid is a teenager and they think that you're so not cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw my trophies proudly displayed. I was very proud of what I did, and they're even made out of like car parts and stuff, which is really cool. And like I said, my husband and I we're talking about other projects, that are more family friendly. Like I think we're gonna build a a rat rod. So I'm pretty excited about that. We've talked about getting rid of his truck too, just because we don't really, his is a 2-seater. So even though his isn't as dangerous as mine, it's that same situation. Not until she's older can she, be in that truck. So he did talk about buying me like this, like one of those like Nissan like SUV type vehicles and slamming that and just making it a really nice mini truck. But I'm like, it's not cool though. Like, I mean, it's cool, but it's not cool.
Same.
Yeah. So I'm like, I would rather go get a classic car and restore it and have it be like the family fun. Like I've wanted to get like a classic old school wagon and restore it, make it nice, but put in like Bluetooth radio and, make it luxurious and start doing road trips across the country in it.
Yeah. Put seatbelts on them because they didn't have them back then.
Yeah, exactly.
As an adult, you realize that as a child, you were riding in a car with no seatbelts and you're going, oh my God.
Oh yeah. Especially being like me growing up, my dad had a pickup. I just rode in the back of that pickup.
Oh yeah, that's another one. I'm going, what are you doing? No. Yeah, no, my parents had a station wagon, I remember, and classic with the 70s on, the wood panels on the side, and the back end that would fold down, and that's where you would have the seats for you to sit in, kind of thing. Yeah, no seatbelts.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. I'm like, really? Really? Jesus. Yeah, it just changes with the times. Things change, people adapt, they learn. But yeah, no, that's a cool idea of restoring an old car. I love old cars. Like, I always see, I'm like, damn, look at that body. And
same here, especially a muscle car. I'm like, oh
yeah. But then I also go, ooh, those parts are expensive. They don't make them anymore.
Well, we were even looking at just buying shells now. People want shells with nothing in them for $10,000-$20,000. We're like, oh yeah, no,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. And Facebook Market does not help at all.
Nope, not at all.
No. Goodness gracious. Well, on that note, before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you?
Yes, so I'm currently finishing up my Dark Paranormal trilogy. Book 2 is off with the editor right now, and I'm finishing writing book 3, and that'll go off to the editor in August. I'm planning on actually doing a rapid release with them and having them both out. My goal is by the end of October, but I'm never one to sacrifice quality for having it out as quickly as possible. So if we need some more time to make it the best book series possible, then my ultimate goal is just by the end of 2022. But planning on releasing those pretty close together. And then after that, I'm probably summer of 2023, I have my first Murphy Brother book coming out. And I know I have a lot of people emailing me asking how long they have to wait for Killian's book. So that'll be the next one in that realm. And then, as any other author, I have a very long work in progress list of projects I'm working on. And actually next year I'm taking a slow on releases just so I can spend more time writing and getting these books done and then releasing more. But the next confirmed book I have coming out with a solid date would be April of 2024, and that's a dark mafia retelling, like a dark fairy tale, but I'm doing it as a dark mafia retelling of Rapunzel.
Ooh.
So I'm I've had the blurb and a lot of that written for a while, so I can't wait to finally sink my teeth into that one.
Promise me you're going to have a scene somewhere where she gets the skillet and smacks the hero with it. I don't care if that happened in the original or not, but I want to see that.
Well, and that's one of the fun things about it. I decided to take away the paranormal part of it, so there'll be no magic. So I'm going with the captive, lied to,
kidnapped kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yep. But I was actually planning that as just a little homage because that's my Rapunzel, Tangled is mine and my daughter's favorite movie to watch.
Mine too.
So I'm like, I have to at least do the frying pan or a good cast iron pan somewhere in that book, and it'll make perfect sense, especially because there's no, like magic in this world, and eventually this girl's going to be kidnapped and she's going to do something. So
got to grab something for self-defense. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So I'm excited for that one. Like,
yay.
And it's actually part of a collaboration. So it's not, so we're all writing books of different fairy tale, dark retellings.
Ooh,
and,
nice.
The books are individual. They're all of our own, but they're just part of the same series. And then I'm doing that collaboration. And then one more that's like a sex sells collaboration. And that book will be probably late 2023 or sometime in 2024. But, the theme of that series is basically, some form of, sex worker, slave, women using her body for sex and transaction.
Okay. You got a little bit of everything there, girl.
Like I said, I have so many personalities living within me that require attention. So it's always all over the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, we do appreciate that when it becomes into books. So thank you for sharing. Yeah. Well, thank you again for being a guest and spending time with me to get to know you. And I'm really looking forward to hang out with you at Lore when we get there in September in Chicago.
I'm so excited to, like, I'm still buying my outfits and looking them up right now. So
perfect. And I will be including all of her social media information, so you guys don't have to go hunting for it. It will be in the episode's post over at Viviana Enchantress of Books. And until next time, happy listenings.
Thank you to all of our Audiobook Lovin Podcast Patreon. Special thanks to Nixley Zenner, Carol Liebner, Brittany Robinette Leiter, Michelle Bastard,
Brandy Schmidt, April Branson.
The Audiobook Lovin Podcast has special Patreon access levels. Join today to receive benefits including early access to episodes, shout-outs, special exclusive content, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/audiobooklovin. We thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. For links and more information discussed in today's episode, previous podcasts, or the Audiobook Lovin Series, please visit our website, vivianaenchantressofbooks.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast. Until next time, happy listening.